accountability and responsible behavior that does not enable the spread of the pandemic. Public transport, in giving effect to the President's pronouncement and subsequent gazetting of regulations by the Minister of Cooperative Governance, Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, we have amended our directions to give effect to these regulations subject to the following restrictions. Interprovincial travel is now permitted, subject to restrictions on public transport vehicles. Minibuses, minibuses, and buses are only permitted to carry a maximum of 70% of their licensed passenger carrying capacity when undertaking long-distance travel. Long distance is defined as any distance in excess of 200 kilometers, irrespective of whether it crosses provincial boundaries or not. For the undertaking of short distance public transport of 200 kilometers or less, buses, minibuses, minibuses, e-hailing services, meter taxis, shuttle services, chauffeur-driven vehicles, and scholar transport vehicles are permitted to carry 100% of their maximum licensed passenger capacity. Rail operations are permitted to carry a maximum of 70% of their licensed passenger capacity. Long-distance passenger rail is now permitted to resume operations subject to the passenger capacity restrictions. In line with our commitment to maintain maximum compliance with health protocols, a driver, owner, or operator of a public transport service may not allow any member of the public not wearing a face mask to board or be conveyed in a public transport owned or operated by him or her. It is a strict requirement that at all times, the operators of public transport services should adhere to health protocols stipulated in the current regulations applicable to Alert Level 2. Air travel is crucial to our efforts to gradually resume economic activity. In reopening our airspace, we have put protocols in place to determine the state of readiness for our airports to resume operations in a phased approach. This process is managed by the Civil Aviation Authority, who has done a splendid job in ensuring compliance with safety and health measures. Despite movement to Alert Level 2, we'll continue on the same trajectory until every one of our airports meets the strict protocols. We are happy to announce that in addition to the 14 airports already permitted to operate, 4 more airports have been given the green light to resume operations. Mthatha Airport in the Eastern Cape, Hoedspruit Airport in Limpopo, Phalaborwa Airport in Limpopo, and Margate Airport in KwaZulu-Natal. International air travel remains prohibited in Alert Level 2. Maritime, in line with the gradual easing of restriction, foreign crew changes are permitted only at the Cape Town port and the port of Durban, subject to compliance with the following conditions. A request for crew changes must be completed by a shipping company for its representative on a prescribed form, which must be submitted at least 96 hours prior to the crew changes to the Department of Transport. The crew must comply with all level protocols of the port of entry where the crew changes will be undertaken. Crew changes may take place at ports and off-port limit. Signing on crew may directly transit from the airport to the on board of the vessel, provided that if a layover is necessary, the crew must be quarantined as per the port health protocols. At the employer's cost, and the name of the quarantine facility must be specified in the form. Signing off crew of passenger vessel may directly transit to the airport. Only in exceptional circumstances the signing on and signing off crew may be permitted to lay over. Cruise ships remain prohibited from calling at any of the South African ports except for the disembarkation of the returning South African crew or South African citizens or holders of permanent residence permits. We are encouraged by the levels of cooperation and compliance to our directions by all South Africans and transport operators across all modes. Our ability to ensure safe mobility relies on this cooperation. We encourage our people to remain resilient and work with authorities in halting the spread of this pandemic. I note that today's order by the Western Cape High Court. I will await a full written judgment and will peruse same and apply my mind and make a pronouncement with regard to the court order and the judgment by Judge Nathan Erasmus. The Road Traffic Amendment Bill was introduced earlier in June this year, 2020, in Parliament and introduces 0% alcohol level for all motorists. Section 65 of the Principal Act is thereby amended. No persons shall on public road drive a vehicle or occupy the driver's seat of a motor vehicle, the engine of which is running, while there is any concentration of alcohol in any specimen of blood taken from any of his or her body. At the present moment, is not less than 0.05 gram, 10 per 100 milliliters. Research conducted by the RTMC in collaboration with the South African Medical Research Council and the University of South Africa shows that driver alcohol intoxication accounts for 27.1% of fatal crashes in the country. This is estimated to cost the economy 18.2 billion annually. As indicated by this study and many observations, including the recent death of TMPD officers, we need to strengthen the law and ensure that innocent lives are actually saved. So that is where the 0.0% come from in terms of what we're talking about yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Mbalula. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now open the floor. Is yours, journalists who wish to ask any questions. I'm going to request that you give us your name and the media house that you represent, and then you ask your question. Zianda.
Thank you very much. It's Zianda Ngobo from Newsroom Africa. I wonder if the Minister has any statistics since the lifting on the ban of alcohol in terms of fatalities, road accidents, and what the situation is like at the moment. And maybe you could share what he presented at the National Coronavirus Command Council briefing regarding issues in his department.
Thank you so much. Do we have another question, colleagues? We're answered. All right. Or at least your question will be answered briefly. Minister, the question by Zianda, much ado about whether or not you have statistics on the road fatalities thus far and your contribution towards the NCCC today. We are getting some questions coming in via SMS. I think once you have answered Zianda's question, we'll be able to then speak to that.
Do you have them?
What?
Do you have
no, some? Not yet. They're just coming in. Thank you.
First and foremost, we release statistics annually and also, biannually during Easter and also after the festive season. We have not planned to release any statistics in terms of the levels before alcohol, because our measure of attending to road fatalities does not only confine to alcohol. Alcohol is just but one part of what lead to the fatalities on our roads. So we give a total picture in relation to that. It has been proven, even though we have not given empirical evidence at the present moment, But when we release the statistics during the Easter holidays this year, we can link that to the present in relation to the impact of alcohol and also to the impact of reckless driving on our roads in terms of our statistics. There was low levels of fatalities. Fatalities on the roads are bigger than the fatalities of COVID-19 combined over a period of time. Just on one weekend of Easter, you know, we bury hundreds of people on the roads. So that tells you that the numbers in terms of road fatalities are doubling up as compared to those of COVID-19. At the present moment, with regard to COVID-19, it has been proven that when people were not drinking and all of that, we account for low fatalities in relation to road accidents on the roads that are driven by alcohol. Just one weekend after the lifting of the ban of alcohol, even though we can't quantify that, we have seen horrible scenes in our roads, horrible scenes where people drive cars into properties of other people, residents in different areas, driving cars into houses. Horrible scenes. I mean, the killing of and the death of our own TMPD officers, may their souls rest in peace. Horrible scenes of drunken driving across. So alcohol is a big challenge for the country. And in this particular instance, a holistic approach on how we regulate alcohol is going to be important going into the future. In relation to us, as the Department of Transport, we have got the bill that I've referred to in terms of what is now before Parliament, and we are actually putting across, in terms of that particular bill, an amendment that will ensure 0.0%, as opposed to the present situation, where in which it accounts for 0.05%. So there will be total 0% alcohol when you are tested. So once Parliament passed that, it will be law, and then we'll ensure that we intensify law enforcement. You know, alongside that, we've got R2. But we will not act alone. We'll act with other departments. The effect of alcohol on our society, over accessibility, hours of alcohol, accessibility to our people, and so on. Obviously, we have to work with DTI and other departments in relation to other aspects of alcohol control and abuse in South Africa. So we've got to deal with that. Now, COVID-19 have shown us what alcohol can do to us. That at some point, beds in the hospitals were occupied. Trauma and all of that, precisely because of alcohol cases. So, I mean, if you count cases of trauma in the hospital as a result of road accident and fatalities, the numbers are up. So the evidence is there to basically demonstrate that alcohol is a problem. Nonetheless, we are a secular state, so the notion ban will not arise in our situation. We have had to do it because we wanted to fight back the scourge of coronavirus. But in terms of our daily situation and the laws of the country, there is nothing that will move us to total ban of alcohol. But we've got to control the intake of alcohol. Because education alone, teaching people not to drink and drive and all of that, yes, it is important. We must intensify. But that alone is not enough. So we've got to curtail the over-accessibility of alcohol amongst our people. And it includes a whole lot of issues that should actually be considered going into the future. But from a traffic point of view and dealing with motorists, we are already hitting the ground running. Minister Platin Zimande have already set the ground. So we are simply leveling up. with regard to that. President have signed in the ARTO bill and then into an act, and then we're dealing with the implementation of that. And then we are amending the law in terms of the road traffic amendment bill to deal with the question of alcohol percentages. Because at the present moment, you can get drunk as long as you measure yourself that I've not reached a particular limit. Now we are going for 0. You must be totally sober behind the wheel, meaning when you are drunk, you must say, my wife drive because you are sober. My friend drive because you are sober. We can't all get drunk and drive. Cannot happen. And in that way, the law will bite. There will be serious consequences, but at the same time will reduce, the recklessness and the total disregard of the law when it comes to the question of driving and drinking. So that is what we are not only intending, it is already in the system. So we are implementing that, and it is happening, and we're looking forward to positive results going into the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Mbalula. There are a couple of questions that have come in via text. I'm going to start with the question from Sine Payne from Daily Maverick, and I can assure you there's no relation at all, so no nepotism on my side. I think you have answered partially Sine's question, Minister, so you'll see which aspects have not been covered and perhaps speak to that. Sine would like to know, following the Minister's statements over the last few days on alcohol, is it not the department's responsibility to use roadblocks to stop potential drunk drivers? And is it not the responsibility as Minister to ensure traffic officers are punished for allowing bribes from people suspected to be drunk driving? The second question on rail, does this mean all lines across the country are open under level 2, including ones like Muldersvlei lines in Cape Town? Muldersvlei lines in Cape Town, that question about rail, Minister. And then the third question from Sine, will licenses be revoked from people who are caught driving drunk? Will licenses be revoked? And then there's a question, Minister, that is coming from Jerome Isaacs, and Jerome is from Newsman. Jerome would like to know, Minister, Namibia announced earlier today that Namibia's borders will be reopened to international travelers via Hosea Kutago International Airport from 1 September 2020. The question that Jerome would like answered is, when can we expect regional travel to other SADC countries? And will we have a cruise season for the cruise liner industry at all this year? So 2 questions about whether or not the borders will be open to SADC countries, and whether or not we can still redeem the cruise season for the cruise liner industry this year. And then the third and last question coming from Sakiseni Ngomalo from The Mercury. Sakiseni would like to know, there has been an ongoing report of truck drivers' strikes looming as local truck drivers are complaining and demanding that freight companies do away with employment of foreign drivers. The question is, what is the Department of Transport doing to ensure that there is stability in the trucking industry? So Saki would like to know about the Minister's response regarding the trucking industry and the threat of looming strikes there, Minister.
Roadblocks and bribes is part of our comprehensive plan to ensure that we reduce fatalities. We adopted 365 days wire campaign last year, and that has been implemented. It was interrupted by COVID-19 because most of the motorists were not on the road, and there were not a number of fatalities on our roads. So we are strengthening the law on the one hand, but at the same time, law enforcement is taking place on a daily basis. And we have arrested a number of our cops. We have arrested a number of cops in terms of the 365 days campaign, 24/7 wire. We have trapped them, and then we have arrested them. Those who are taking bribes at the airport, in Tshwane and everywhere in the country in a sting operation, we have arrested them. They are standing trial, others are behind the bars. So bribe taking is no longer an easy matter that people go along with it all the time. But they know that whoever are still doing that, they will be found. And our operations in terms of sting operations to fight corruption by those who undermine the rule of law in our roads will continue and will be intensified, working with other agencies. And I wish to thank my colleague, Minister Fikile, and his team, the Hawks, and working with our own police officers, the RTMC. We have been able to undertake these operations and arrested a lot of corrupt police officers on our roads. All lines are open, no long distance. Lines will be open according to the state of readiness. Next week, I will announce an integrated security plan for PRASA. And then an integrated security plan that includes law enforcement, the police, that includes the Justice Department. We arrest people who steal cables. They get out simply on minor charges of theft and all of that. We are now up in the gear because the law does allow us to do so. We will be charging these criminal wannabes with economic sabotage charges. That's what will actually be happening. But all lines will be open in accordance to the upgrade in terms of their own capacity, bringing back the lines to life, and ensuring that all our lines are actually operational. And that is what we are basically focusing on. And long distance will be back to operations. And among others, this includes a plan that is ensuring that the security is up to scratch. And we are going to be implementing that plan in the next coming weeks at PRASA, working with all other law enforcement agencies to regain the lines, to ensure that as we spend on major capital projects at PRASA, we're able to ensure that they are protected. As we open up the lines and the railway lines and also the rolling stock, new rolling stock as well, that it is protected. And that protection also extends to the passengers inside the train. About 3,100 people have been recruited and are in the process of being employed at PRASA. License will be revoked going forward in terms of our demerit system that we're going to be implementing and rolling out. That is what is going to happen for Daily Maverick. So our integrated approach in terms of the law, fighting drunkenness, reckless driving, and those who drive without any permission in terms of the law and licenses will face the music in terms of the law. When are the borders going to be open, as they are closed now regionally? It will depend on the nut joints, the evaluation that is made and the recommendation they make to NCCC, and Cabinet finally taking a decision for us to open the borders. As you know that these matters have been dealt with on a case-by-case basis. For now, border travel and all of that inter-border regional is not permitted at the present moment. So probably that can happen at level 1 when we are moving forward. But all of that depends on the work that the net joints will recommend to the NCCC in relation to the opening of borders. And that goes also to international travel. When will that happen? In September or next year? It will happen as and when recommendations are placed before and the empirical evidence permit us to open up the borders. It can happen even before end of the year. And in terms of the month and time, I cannot actually provide because it depends on a whole lot of things. Decisions don't just get to be taken. They are subjected to a whole process. Net joints, different departments like ours, like decisions we have taken before, make submissions, work in different work streams within the net joints, and then they get to be considered by the net joints, and the net joints report regularly to the NCCC, which is chaired by the President. Based on their recommendations, then decisions are actually taken. So as the economy is opening up, the possibility of opening up the borders will also exist. The possibility of opening up international travel will also exist. And it is not a matter that it will not happen. But work as we speak continues to be done. We are not relaxed all the time. We work very hard as much as we work from home and all of that, but we work under the auspices of the NCCC and Cabinet to ensure that the country moves forward and so on. Sometimes it is easy to criticize because people are looking on. It's like criticizing a team that loses every weekend. And of course, other teams have lost this past weekend. And then it's easy for us who are spectators to criticize and see fault in the players. That was an easy goal. That could have been a goal. That's what a spectator does. That's what a fan does. Now, government in this particular instance is the player. So it consults, it looks at the spectators, what is in their interest, and all the time we must win. And some of the decisions we take long to get to where people should be. You can see the joy when we move to level 2. It's not that people don't care about the health measures, but lockdown has been taking place over a long period of time. Privileges and rights of people have been taken away. Freedom, just freedom, to be free, to move from one area to the other. But it does not mean you must be overexcited and basically not obey, because remember, as much as government does the work it does, it starts with me and you to be healthy. Does not matter you are a minister, you are the most famous person on planet Earth, COVID-19 will reach you. And it might not be as lenient as to others where you have an opportunity to live and like others survive it. You will go. I've seen healthy people, they are now 6 feet underground. And so we've got to keep observing the regulations. It does not mean when we reach level 2, we must then begin to do things that will undermine our own health and also the health of others. Even if we have to visit our families, we've got to interact now and travel across provinces. We are permitted to do that, but let's keep on our distance. Let's keep on our masks. That's what we need to do. There is no cure. There is no vaccine for COVID. And it is all in our hands. How we behave, how we control the behavior, and all of that. Government regulate the environment to be able for us to exist, to coexist, to cohabit, and to work together going forward. People have got to work. People have got to move around. The economy has got to function. The economy is battered. And all of that, the economy has got to grow. And therefore, long after we have found a solution to the coronavirus, our economy must be surging on. Coronavirus have done a damage socially in society, have done damage economically in our society. You can imagine if we are a society that is going to surpass certain ages without finishing school and all of that in a democratic dispensation, how it affects school kids at schools and all of that, it has simply interrupted our lives. So it's not a myth. We've got to work on this and ensure that we work together. So cruise liners, the same. Cruise liners take a longer period. They plan their cruise way before. So at the present moment, it's completely interrupted. So you can't expect any travel by cruise at the present moment. Coronavirus is with us and is ravaging. In our communities, in our countries, is a mess. So cruise liners will be on the stoppage for a longer period, and probably next year we'll start to look at the situation and plan ahead for what needs to happen going forward. Truck driver strike. There is a multidisciplinary approach, a interministerial approach. I just spoke to one of the truck leaders in our country. She was saying to me, coming to this press conference, that, today I'm calling you and we're not fighting, and so on. The Department of Home Affairs is leading us on this matter. And all other ministers were contributing to that. For us, is to ensure that what is defined in terms of the law is permissible for whoever comes from anywhere to drive trucks in South Africa. It is actually within the law. If not, we basically take them out. And in this particular instance, that's what we're doing with all other departments, the police, ourselves, transport, but led by the Department of Home Affairs. So we want stability on this, because people who are driving trucks, we don't only drive trucks. It's not only foreigners in our country. Even South Africans are driving trucks from other countries. That includes the African continent, as far as the Congo and everywhere else. And we must keep that in mind. And that is what we need to actually understand. Given the situation of unemployment, we can't define truck driving as a scarce skill. Up until the law defends South Africans in terms of what is scarce and all of that, and what is a job that can be done by foreigners in our country. And with COVID-19, these are some of the things that we need to address in terms of our regulations and the laws in the country. We have also seen in other countries in the African continent, when you go to Ghana, Ghana have now stepped up the act to say that certain jobs are preserved for Ghanaians. And we have seen these scenes in our media in which foreigners have been chucked out in those countries. And it's not termed xenophobia. It's simply obedience to the laws of the country. South Africa must equally do the same. There are certain jobs in the country that must be preserved for South Africans. It cannot be a given, even in our society, to come to accept that, no, our people are lazy. They don't want to do certain jobs. We must regulate. And ministers of small, medium, macro enterprise and others are considering these matters. And this is the reality we've got to deal with. But South Africans cannot, because of some criminal foreign elements in our country, drug traffickers and all of that, take the law into their own hands. They must continue to work with law enforcement, but we must move with speed also to deal with the law, to ensure that we preserve certain jobs for our people. And that is important, given the state of our economy and the joblessness in our country. And that is not xenophobia. You cannot just pitch in another country and do everything as you wish. There are certain things that are preserved for others. And South Africa also will move towards that. Yes, our borders are porous. We are addressing that by means of law and security means and so on. It is important to address that. But we can't condone xenophobia and attack of innocent people in South Africa. There are many foreigners in our country who are doing jobs, including working in the domestic work and all of that in our homes and everywhere else, Zimbabweans next door and so on. It is in our interest that Zimbabwe must flourish, that Zimbabwe must become a better economy, so that Zimbabweans don't have to cross across crocodiles and everything else and come to South Africa. So Zimbabwe must be a country that is independent and be able to provide for its own nation. And that is why issues of sanctions and all of those things and the processes of democracy within Zimbabwe are being addressed and attended to, working with the Zimbabweans themselves, because it is the Zimbabweans that will find a solution to their own country. We cannot lead that. It is them who must lead. And it's not like we're cowards, like others who have decided that we must take unilateral decisions on behalf of other countries. Then it will be anti-foreign policy of South Africa. We don't take decisions for other countries. We solidarize with them. And that's what we do. And that's what we've been doing with Zimbabwe and over the years. And Zimbabweans are our brothers and sisters. And that is what is important. But in their own country, they can also become even a better nation like they've been. We know that that economy has been battered and ravaged over the years. But once Zimbabwe's economy kicks off and becomes stronger, we know that the rest of other challenges will not be with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. With your permission, last round of questions?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're going to start from the colleagues who are here. Zianda, has your question been addressed? Has it been answered?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
I just have a clarity-seeking question. I know that the police minister had mentioned something about discussions with the justice minister about expunging, the criminal records of those who were arrested as a result of breaking the lockdown regulations. I want to know whether or not such a discussion has taken place with you, Minister, in particular when it comes to people who were arrested, for example, during roadblocks for breaking the regulations, whether or not you've spoken to the Justice Minister about the expunging of these records.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, any other questions from the floor? We're happy. All right, let's go to WhatsApp. We have a question from Vickers Berger from Netwerk 24 and Build. Minister Vickers would like to know, can the minister at this stage indicate when the ban on international travel will be lifted? I do believe you have touched on that, but perhaps for purposes of emphasis, you may go back to it. And then there's a question also on something that you have touched on, but just for clarity purposes, on when the zero alcohol in blood rule will come in, when that bill that is before Parliament is likely to be passed, and where it's at the moment in the process. I know you have alluded to that, but perhaps the minister can expand on that. And the last question coming to us from my namesake, Ayanda Msweli. Ayanda is from Ukhozi FM. Minister, Ayanda would like to know, abantu bakhala ngokuthi they are charged penalties for late renewal. Kanti sesitshelwe ukuthi kunoshwele, ushwele wawukhona uwagaze wabakhona. Awugaze wabakhona. Or Inetus was not updated. So wanting to know about the grace period. People are being turned away saying there is no grace period and they are being charged penalties. Is Inetus not updated? Where is the issue and how can it be fixed? That question from Ayanda, Minister.
I'm not going to respond to the question of expunging of records. It's not my terrain. Minister Lamula will respond to that in terms of the lockdown and together with the Minister of Local Government responsible for disaster management. Those issues belong there. So we speak, we interact on all of these issues, but I'm not the lead department. That's what I'm trying to say. So I can't speak. So we can't speak on that particular matter because we are not the lead department in dealing with that particular issue. On the international ban will be lifted in terms of international travel. We are doing work on that as a department to look at international travel, and our teams will come back to us and we will work it through the net joints. At the present moment, if you look at Europe and most of the continents, international travel has begun, not in a very, very fast and high volumes. There is still care in relation to that. We can't just go faster into it, precisely because we have seen what international travel has done when it comes to the spread and the scourge of COVID-19. We, however, allow international travel if you want to go and work, like black coffee, internationally. And the work of that man is very nice, of black coffee, you see, because you work as a DJ. So if you want to go and work and you are working internationally, you are allowed. You know, like if you want health evacuation is allowed. And also, what do you call, if you stay in America, you are here, and because of the lockdown, you are allowed to travel back to your country. We've been repatriating people back and forth to their countries. So that is permissible. Business in terms of cargo and all of other things is permissible. So you can get stuff from China and everything else coming inside the country from UK, from United States of America, medicine, pharmacies, and all of that. The reason you've got supply of medication is because that is coming inside the country. So that is allowed. The only thing is passengers. We have not as yet opened for that because we are the transmitters. We take it from here to another country and all of that. And now we're approaching summer in South Africa. I've seen in Tanzania, they've started to open up for international travel. So we look at ourselves, but we also benchmark ourselves against the rest in the world. And we are looking at this, but I can't tell you, is it going to happen next week? Is going to happen next month? We're looking at it. And once we come at a conclusion that we will have limited opening, NCCC and Cabinet will take a decision based on the work that our teams have done. We are doing work right away, as I'm speaking to you, on the issue of international travel and looking at when exactly do we want to open compared to others. Where are we? Africa, the rest of the world, and South Africa. And if we open, what measures are we going to take? It's not going to be business as usual like before. We have also seen in other countries already what they do. Once you arrive at the airport, you get tested. If you are found to be, positive, you return right there and there, back to where you come from. And then now, even when you travel, you must have some form of certificate like yellow fever that guarantees that you don't have COVID. You test in your country and test where you go. So it's going to be a cumbersome process. But already we see that happening in other countries that have begun to open up international travel. But besides that, everyone else on the measures, like I've explained, health evacuation. If you are working outside the country and you are a student, you want to go back at your own expense, of course, you can go back. And also utilize the repatriation processes that are taking place. You are allowed to go back. Regulations to that effect have been passed to allow such movement to happen and so on. So we do have South Africans who are working internationally, who have left the country, teachers, entertainers, and all of those have left the country and they've gone back to where they are working internationally. So that is actually allowed. When will the bill be passed in Parliament? The bill was introduced in Parliament and will now serve before the Portfolio Committee. And thereafter, we hope that should actually happen before end of the year. Yeah, it should be before end of this, before Parliament rise. We should be able to bring that. So if that happens, it means by December this year, no alcohol in your blood. So that's what is going to happen going forward. So it's not a matter that we are conceptualizing. People think we are still thinking about this thing. It's already in the system. I know the Bishops' Conference wrote me a letter, which I'm going to respond to that. The process of consultation have taken place, and I'm not going to repeat it today. But nonetheless, we've received a lot of responses to this extent. And it's not the process that I started. It was started by Minister Platon Zimande. So I'm taking it to the final conclusion. And that is what I'm basically doing. So South Africa, in the next year or so, will be a country where when you drive, there will be no percentage in your alcohol. Zero alcohol. So that's where we are heading as a country. It doesn't start now. And that is based on our own experience over a period of time. We have gone from 0.8, 0.5. We've gone through this before and all of that, limit and so on. So we are actually moving now to the stage where it will be 0.0. Where the grace period is not being amplified or implemented, we will make a follow-up on that. I've received a lot of complaints with regard to the grace period for the lockdown, and I will make a special, not plea, a special meeting with the MECs to ensure that we are able to meet the requirements of the grace period when it comes to the renewal of the driver's licenses. So we will be implementing that, and we will come back as well to explain that particular part for the rest of the country. But thank you very much, Ayanda. And also just to reiterate that the judgment of today, we will look into that, and then we will also make our views known. And the Minister of Transport has never had a view that says a board at PRASA must not be appointed. I want to work with all people who want to fight the rot at PRASA, and we continue to do so. I've got no intention to undermine the law, and where I am being judged, I will apply my mind and then go to the drawing board. My team will advise me in relation to whether or not there are certain things that we need to ventilate further. But my intention, honestly, about PRASA is to get things going. And I'm happy about the past 6 months with all the upside, the up and downs. For the first time in the history of PRASA, I'm standing here and I'm not dealing with the question of corruption. That people got contracts, there is corruption at PRASA. We are moving towards stability. And that's what I want. I want stability. PRASA must perform. PRASA must produce the results. Our people, as we speak, don't have a mode of transport. We are 10 years behind in terms of modernization programs. The stories that I hear at Zondo Commission about PRASA, definitely my team is not party to that. I'm not party to that, and we are not going to execute and behave that is business as usual. It is not. Our interventions have always been informed by moving with speed and by ensuring that we preserve some dignity for the institution and over and above defend the resources of the people of South Africa. It cannot be that PRASA is a bottomless pit. Billions of rands, year in and year out, are gone, unaccounted for. We have had boards and after boards. I'm done with the board, not even done. The processes of the board, as I had promised, are underway, and all of those will kick in and will be implemented going forward. So there's never been any resistance on my part in that regard, and I'm ready to work with everybody. I reiterate, I'm ready to work with everybody going forward to restore honesty, to restore integrity, but over and above that, an entity that will serve the people of South Africa. You know, the poorest of the poor use PRASA, and they do all of those things. When PRASA is not operational, funds have been embezzled, we are fighting in courts and all of that, the poorest of the poor are basically affected. I want to restore governance, and that is my commitment. But governance cannot be built over trash. It must be built on a clean slate. You know, that place have got history, and that is what is important. So I will study the judgment, and my team will also study the judgment with me and all of that, and then we'll make our decisions in terms of what needs to happen. But I needed to underline what I'm saying, to reiterate my view that we want to work with speed. And the work that has already been covered must be sustained, and will be sustained in relation to PRASA. And I can assure everybody that in the next coming years, that place will be a totally different place to be. It is not business as usual as it would have been. We have ruffled feathers, and other people will not be happy, and they will fight back. People who are implicated in corrupt activities at PRASA will fight back. And the genuine citizens and civil servants who want to serve our people will emerge. And they will be affirmed by the process going forward. And I want a partnership with everybody. Unite behind, I've said it, I'm still reiterating it. I'm not in the war zone with them. Of course, they have to hold us accountable, and which is what they did. We went to court. Now we've got the judgment before us. We must look at that judgment and move forward. My intentions, I'm happy, have never been put under question. And in this particular instance, I appreciate that. And I wish to uphold that going forward and work with everybody and cover the work that we have done, build stability, ensure that the rail network is protected. As it is now, PRASA rail network is in tatters. There's no security there. Security companies took us to court. Security companies were irregularly appointed, and decisions had to be taken. And it was back and forth on those particular matters. And in this particular regard, other decisions had to be taken to ensure that the rail network is protected. I can tell you that the people who are criminals in PRASA and doing all the work is syndicates. It's criminal elements. Some of them are working from within to undermine the stability of that organization. And that period is coming to an end. So we've got a security plan for PRASA, which we will unveil and is being implemented as we speak. And that includes law enforcement. And there's been important arrests that have been made in the past weeks. And some of the people were denied bail. And I salute the prosecution and the police who have been working around the clock together with PRASA security and all of that. And I also salute PRASA staff that continue to want to uphold good leadership, good governance in that particular organization. And indeed, there is a lot of goodwill and a lot of people within the organization that want PRASA to succeed. And that there is a lot of potential. But what we could not allow and will never allow going forward, will fight tooth and nail, is to have PRASA to become a bottomless pit and to become a free holiday for thieves. And we are not party to the thieves. And we take quite exception to that. We are not party to that. We are not party to the shenanigans that have been going on there. Those who have been doing wrong things there will pay. It doesn't matter how long it will take. And they think that the law is weakened. But one time at a go, they will be found, and where action had to be taken, had to be taken. We will soldier on and learn from our mistakes, and at the same time with the goodwill of moving forward and ensure that we bring stability in this particular organization. Thank you very much.
Honourable Minister, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, always a pleasure, much appreciated. Thank you very much. This brings to a close this media briefing. Do drive safely. Good night. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
That's the